Welcome back to A Fresh Story, the podcast where we have conversations about brave decisions to start over again. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Jenny, and we're so glad you're here today.
Hello, Sister Pooh. What's going on?
Sister Pooh. So we went from Sister for Robin right to Sister Pooh. The formation of a nickname is very important.
Yeah, we'll get into that in another episode.
I don't know what's going on. I'm eating a granola bar from Southdown.
Not just any granola bar.
I was heavily influenced. Like, I saw it on their stories, and I literally said yesterday, "Hey, let's go get those." And I never had one before because they don't look particularly interesting, but they're like one of those like energy balls, but it's like a whole bar of it. It's like
so good.
Oats, peanut butter, chocolate chips, and it's vegan, and so it means I can eat it. Dates, agave or maple syrup, maybe. It's really good. So I've been like, but they're really big and dense, which is great. Anyway, we're Southdown stands. Southdown, whenever you want to start sponsoring this podcast, we're ready.
Shout out to Southdown.
Shout out to Southdown. We talked. This episode was great.
Oh, such a good episode.
Very special for Olivia.
Yeah, so this episode was with Gabrielle Stone, who is a beautiful, wonderful, amazing human. And, so much of life is like these breadcrumbs, like these like things that are like left in your way and you don't know how they're going to like impact you later. And so when I was going through my separation, and for anybody that doesn't know, you often go through a deep depression, the divorce depression, like TM that you go through. Some of my friends who didn't really know what to do or how to support me would send me things. And one of the books they sent me was Eat, Pray, FML, which I thought was hysterical because we all love Liz Gilbert. But like, this was like a real like cheeky take on it. And like, that is how you feel when you're going through it. Like, fuck my life. And so it was by this woman, Gabrielle Stone, and I loved it. It was on my bedside table. I had multiple copies. And lo and behold, years later, we got the chance to sit down and have a conversation with her about her journey and the book and how it all came together. And it was just amazing.
I think the most interesting part was the story, and her story is fascinating.
Yeah.
I recommend everybody read the book and follow her on TikTok because she makes great
and there's
TikTok
a second
videos.
book. Yeah.
Yeah. But the other interesting part that I took away was she self-published. And I'm a little bit of a Luddite when it comes to this, but like, I didn't realize that you could be so popular when you self-publish. I mean, she
talks about it on the she talks about it on the episode, and it was, again, we love the business behind things, and she is a businesswoman at heart. And again is so much in the Fresh Starts ethos, where she took a broken heart and turned it into a platform 100%. For empowerment.
But Olivia and I are working on some super secret projects that we're very excited about, and learning about the self-publication versus traditional publication methods.
The big five,
the big five, and getting a publishing house and everything like that. Learning about the benefits was what I needed to hear that night, and I think I said that to her. Maybe I said it after the podcast was over, but it was what I needed to hear that night. And she was really encouraging and really lovely and really generous with her story and her time.
Yeah. And her vulnerability. Yeah.
Yeah. And she has some exciting things coming up. She's getting married again in March.
I know. It's so exciting.
And we always, we love love here. We love love.
I was just thinking about that. I was thinking about like nobody, I mean, okay, maybe the nobody, but like I think divorced people love more than people realize. Yeah. And I think she was like a perfect testament to that. Like we love so deeply, and she healed so well. Like, her story is just beautiful. And she said, yes, she took the risk on herself. And I just love that. So enjoy our conversation with Gabrielle Stone. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to her Fresh Story so we can keep telling Fresh Start stories. Gabrielle Stone is no stranger to the world of entertainment and the idea of a fresh start in life. Growing up on the set with her legendary Scream Queen mother, Dee Wallace, she had days of licking off mommy's fake blood and watching behind-the-scenes movie magic. Seeing the world with mom and dad gave her the travel bug at an early age, until Gabrielle experienced a real-life horror when she lost her father suddenly at age 7. After many years in the industry herself, Stone transitioned from meaty acting roles to writing and directing. Her award winning films, It Happened Again Last Night and After Emma, gained her awards for writing, directing, and acting. But she had a bigger role in life that she would soon present itself. Freaking badass. After the rug was pulled out from her when her husband's affair came to light, she found herself falling into the arms of another man. After a second failed attempt at love and a massive heartbreak, she decided that instead of landing flat on her ass, she'd make a career out of it, which we love. And so came the birth of her book, Eat, Pray, FML, where she shared all of the mistakes, all the lessons, and most importantly, how she became a fearless leader from it all. When fans around the world demanded more, the highly anticipated sequel, The Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl, and the podcast FML Talk were born. And Gabrielle soon realized that her broken heart had bloomed a movement, which we are all about here at Fresh Starts. I love what she says on her website. It says, and this like cracks me up. A wise woman once said, "Fuck that shit," and lived happily ever after. And we are all about that. And I just want to say, so your book came out in June 2019. I was currently living in the house with my ex-husband and my two kids before he moved out. We were living in for 3 months. We lived together in the house. Yeah. It was truly Eat, Pray, FML every single day. I had multiple friends send me your book. I literally, my bedside table was like, your book, your book, your book, your book. And I was like,
oh my God,
like
I love it.
I was like, because you know what, back then, and even this wasn't that long ago, right? We weren't talking about divorce. We weren't talking about this hard shit. And I felt so alone and scared. And just knowing that somebody else was writing about this was truly inspiring. So I'm really honored to have you here tonight sharing your story with us. Thank you for being here.
Oh my God, I love that so much. And I'm so glad that it was some type of anchor and hope in such a shitty time. I cannot imagine having to be cohabitating with someone you're getting a divorce from for that long.
No, it was not fun.
I would not wish that on my worst enemy, but I'm so glad that everybody was smart enough to send you my book. I'm glad that it helped. Cause yeah, you're right. When I first, discovered the affair and realized I was getting divorced, there was a lot of shame around it. And it was embarrassing. And I didn't want people to know. And like, I'm a failure. Yeah. And now I really look back at my divorce and I'm like, I'm a badass. Like, good for me for choosing myself. Like, I hope that women don't see that as the end, but see it as your chance for a beautiful new beginning.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%. We're so excited to have you here. Let's start with my first question, which is, how are you tonight?
I'm so good, guys. I'm so good.
Well, you have a lot of things. I was just looking at your beautiful Instagram feed and your life is beautiful. I want to hear all about it. I want to get into it.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I really try hard to keep my Instagram authentic. I think there's so much bullshit out there. Yeah. People just being like, look at my beautiful life. So there are times where I'm like, I'm fucking depressed and like shit's tough right now, but right now life is pretty good. So that's what you're seeing great. on my page.
It can be authentically good too.
Yes.
And that's important to show people, like authentic joy. Why don't you take us back to the beginning of your Fresh Starts story?
Oh my God. Okay. So I got married in 2015. This was like the guy that everybody was like, oh my God, she's finally found someone she doesn't have to fix, someone that's going to be her equal, someone that wants to take care of her. Everybody was really like, oh, wow. Like finally. And it was interesting because from the get-go, he had a problem with my career. At the time, I was working just as an actress. That was my dream. And I was just able to fully support myself without like a side job or a day job, which is huge in LA. Like everyone that's acting has like 3 jobs because it's such a cutthroat industry. You're constantly like, book a job so you can like get a paycheck. It's tough. So I was at a place in my career where I was really proud of myself that I was at least like getting by without having that day job. And I was starting to get roles that were a little bigger with, bigger budget films. And it was a really exciting time for me as an actress, like seeing that trajectory start to change. And he had a problem with it from the beginning. He was really jealous. I mean, if I had a kissing scene in a film I was doing, forget about it. Like it was like hell to pay when I got home and called him after set. Like just like very, very controlling. Didn't want me to go out with my co-stars if there were guys there for dinner, like very obvious. And I saw that, I recognized the red flag, but was like, oh, we'll go to therapy. We'll work through it. It's not the easiest job to like have your significant other do. Like I was understanding of that, but like he met me as an actress. It wasn't like, I work at the grocery store. Just kidding. I'm going to go do films now.
Now,
like
I have a question for you, because we talk a lot about coercive control and emotional abuse and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Was it outwardly like telling you like, I don't like this? Like he was like saying that, or was it more like the kind of like
grumbles,
passive aggressive, subtle?
It wasn't subtle, but it was very manipulative. So it would be, I would come home, for example, from a day on set if I was on location. So like if I was out of town and he was back home, and I would try and like tell him about my day, and the conversation would turn into a screaming, yelling match. And then I would start crying, and then he would start crying. And it was, he was very vocal about, I don't know what you're doing. This makes me uncomfortable. But then after the blowout fight, after, I was in a pool of tears, it was, I'm so sorry. I won't do this anymore. I'll go to therapy. Let me like, send you, a gift card to go shopping, like very manipulative things where he would really tear down my heart and my soul, and then would fix it with something financial. And my love language is gifts and acts of service, as well as quality time. So he was using that to kind of be like, no, look how much I love you. Like, let's book a vacation, or let's go to dinner at somewhere fancy. So it was really toxic. And I kept saying like, we'll go to therapy, we'll work through it. It's not easy, blah, blah, blah. And so we got married. The first year of our marriage was pretty great. Like we rented a house, we nested, we took a beautiful honeymoon. Everything seemed pretty textbook, like that it was going to be wonderful. We had like problems like every relationship does. Most of them surrounded career issues. And now looking back on it, I can see a lot of things that were very early warning signs of narcissistic control, that I kind of brushed off at the time. Like, oh, you would look really good if you got your boobs done. And I'd be like, wait, what? Like I'm the president of the itty bitty titty committee, and I love not being able, like, I don't have to wear a bra. Like shit's fucking great over here. And I would be like, that was weird, but then continue to disregard it. Or you should go see this specific trainer. And like put a lot of focus on my body and what I looked like, and coming like as a recovered eating disorder, it was really triggering for me subconsciously.
And I have to imagine, as your husband and your partner, he knew about that history. He knew, right? It's I say that for the audience, because people will be like, well, maybe he didn't know. No, these men know. They know what they're doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there were things like that now, looking back on it and seeing like what his trajectory ended up being with other women, I'm like, oh my God, he was trying to really get control of me. I was just like, not the one. Like that was not ever going to happen to me, thankfully. There was another time where he was like, if you want to give up acting and be a stay-at-home wife, I'll take care of all the bills. You don't have to work. You can do whatever you want. But if you want to keep acting and pursuing your dreams, you have to like split rent with me and take care of your own stuff, which is ridiculous. Like it's the audacity of that. But at the time I was like, okay, well, I'm going to keep working. So it's fine. I don't mind splitting everything. So we got married. Everything was great for the first year. Then stuff started to slowly change. We started being incredibly unhappy, fighting all the time for about 6 to 7 months. I didn't understand why. Like we were in therapy. I was doing everything we could to try and rectify our relationship and work to get back to a place that, of loving and healthy relationships. And I ended up finding out that he was having an affair for 6 to 7 months with a 19-year-old. And
classy.
That was the main girlfriend. But I uncovered so much, Snapchat porn accounts, like talking to other random girls. DMing inappropriate pictures with like other coaches he worked with. Like it went on and on and on. And after the book came out, I got more messages from other women being like, I have to apologize to you. I'm so sorry. And like went on to try and contact me. So I found out about this affair and filed for divorce and left. It, in my eyes, even in the moment, this is my second chance. This is like, I had been unhappy for 6 to 7 months. Obviously, like that was the reason that, you know, we couldn't like rectify it and get back to a good place. But so I had been mentally checked out for a little while, and I knew that I wanted to leave. I was just like, but we just had this big wedding and we just like had this beautiful honeymoon and all of our friends and family came, and like, and my mom spent all this money to like give me this beautiful dream wedding. Like, what do you mean I'm going to leave a year and a half in? Like that didn't seem feasible.
Right.
And this was like my out. It was like my get out of jail free card. I thankfully, because I had been so unhappy, wasn't in love with him. I loved him. But it was more of like being betrayed by your best friend and like that betrayal and rage feeling. So I left and I filed for divorce, and that's kind of where the new fresh start begins.
Yeah. So, you know, it's so interesting. My story resonates a lot with yours. And one thing my therapist said to me, which really changed my narration of my own life, because I'm a writer also. And so I write everything in my head and as I see it, right? She said, it's not that you ignored the red flags. You saw the red flags. You just had an agenda. And I was like, oh, I love that. Right. Like I did have an agenda, right? For me, it was to have children and get out of my parents' house and, you know, all these things. Right. And I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't gone through that stuff. Right. So clearly you had the universe had bigger plans in store for you. Right.
Yeah.
What was it like being a working actress and at home, things are falling apart, and at work you have to go like literally put on like a happy face or act? What was that duality like?
It was interesting because sometimes things were okay on set, especially towards in that 6 to 7 month period. I did 2 films where one was in LA and the second was on location for 3 weeks, and during those 3 weeks it was great, because there were only 4 people in the cast. One was a female and the other 2 were very like non-threatening men, although that usually didn't matter to him. But it was so good because he was already having his affair. So I was out over there being like, this is great. He's finally like,
the therapy's working,
supporting, like, woo. No, a psych, bitch. But for the times where I would have to, you know, for one example, I did this film called Zombie Killers, and it was kind of like my first movie where I was like, it was a substantially bigger paycheck. I was like much higher on the call sheet. I was looked at as one of like the celebrity names in that film. And it was a huge deal for me personally. And in my career, I was working opposite Misha Barton and Billy Zane. And I remember it was like the best time in my career because it was such a amazing experience to be on that set and like the energy that was there. And it was also the worst time because every single night I was at home on the phone crying because of my fiance at home. It was ridiculous.
Well,
so I would be at home crying up all night and like miserable, and then getting up and being happy because I got to go to set and go to work with all these people that I had like fallen in love with. But it was very weird to have that juxtaposition going on.
Yeah.
The 2 things with narcissists, right, is it's all projection. So if they're saying to you, I think you're cheating, what they're saying is I'm cheating. Yeah. And then the other thing is any like success of yours or good moments of yours, they cannot handle it and they have to ruin it. And
I'll
like,
never forget, we were sitting in therapy once and our therapist like asked him something about like, aren't you proud of her for the films that she's consistently booking? And he went, I mean, no, they're all indies. It's not like she's kissing Adam Sandler. And I was like,
oh no.
So it would be okay if I went and had a sex scene with Adam Sandler, but because like the person working opposite me isn't a big name, like now you're jealous? What the fuck is that? Like that makes no fucking sense.
And you must have known at the time that was insane for him to say. Like, that's because you grew up in the industry. So let's talk about that for a second. Like, this is not new to you. You were literally born into the industry. Your mother was a famous actress. Like, so you grew up around celebrities. You grew up on sets. So I would assume for you to hear that was like a real slap in the face. Like, no,
Totally.
this is not how we do things here.
Totally, especially because there are thousands of actors and actresses in LA that would give their left arm to be booking the stuff that I'm booking and would do it for free. You know what I mean? It's like insanity that he would even have that perspective. And, you know, I also have grown up on sets, like you said, and I know that when you do a sex scene or a kissing scene, it's like, okay, we're going to move this light so it's shining directly at you. Can you arch your back, tilt your head? I know it feels like your neck's going to break. And then, like, you know, kind of smile and then do the kiss. It's like, what the actual, it's so unsexy.
Yeah.
Like, it's the last thing. And so it was just, I should have taken the red flags more seriously than I did. I just, you know, was like, let's paint him yellow and go to therapy.
Well,
it's fine.
The thing is, I think when you're a certain kind of strong, but also like empathetic and vulnerable. So I had not narcissistic abuse, but I had some fucked up shit that was said to me, right? About my body and about my career and things like that. And you're kind of like, okay, weirdo. And you walk away from it instead of being like, because it doesn't knock you down. So you let them get away with it because you're like, oh yeah, you think I should go to the gym? All right, well, I'm not. Like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, oh my God, that's devastating, and being like, wait, they're not supposed to make me feel like that. You're just like, that guy's weird. But I'm gonna get engaged to him anyway. And so it's kind of this like really dangerous situation to be in because you are primed to be the victim of a narcissist, but you're also like a little too tough to really take in the fact that it's a red flag because you're like, walk away from it.
You're completely accurate. I will say that there are things, even as strong and resilient as I am, because of my, you know, what would be looked at as weak spots, like the eating disorder, for example.
Vulnerability.
There were things in that, like I just posted a TikTok recently where there's a bunch of photos from when I was married. I had to like dive into the fucking archives of like my old ass iPhone. And there's photos of me leading up to the wedding when I was working out insanely. And like I look at them now and I'm like, I look fucking anorexic. This is not healthy.
I had the same thing. Same thing. Yeah. So when you were going through all that, and your career was on the up and up and up, who did you celebrate with? Who were your people that would like lift you up and be there, or, you know, the first phone call for all these things if it wasn't him?
My mom and my best girlfriends. It's so funny because at the height of when I was winning those awards for my film, It Happened Again Last Night, which was such a huge deal that I like wrote, directed, produced, and starred in this film, and it was getting all this attention.
Amazing.
And I was winning like massive awards at festivals, and I would call him because he would be invited, but he would be like, oh, I have to work. Oh, I have to do this. And there was always an excuse. Of course, he was off fucking his girlfriend. And I would call after, and it was like such a fake enthusiasm.
Yeah.
But like, I was so proud of myself that it almost didn't care that the person that was supposed to be lifting me up and celebrating me like wasn't doing a good job at that. That was also very close to the time where I found out within like a couple months. So I mean, at that time I feel like I was subconsciously checked out already.
Right. So you go through this big thing. Where did the concept for Eat Pray FML come from? And you know, my other question is, were you always a writer, or like did this just come out of this?
No, so I was not a writer. I mean, I could bullshit the hell out of an English essay, but like was
because you're smart. It's because you're smart.
But was not like a writer. Did never go to school for it. I had written the short that we had done. It Happened Again Last Night, but like a 15-page screenplay is like definitely not a book. So I left my marriage. I drove away from the house and was like, oh my God, this weight has lifted off my shoulders, and was like, fuck this. I'm going to be single for at least a year and focus on myself. And the universe was like, haha, fat chance. And I ended up reconnecting with this guy named Javier, and he was like the only person I had ever been casual with. Like when I say we went on 2 dates, danced at a club, made out, it was fun, and that was it. That was literally it. So when he reached out to me, I was like, yeah, I want to go to a club and make out with this hot Latin dude. Like, absolutely, I deserve that. And was banking on it being like this casual fun fling that could kind of like, you know, just take my mind off of all the bullshit that was going on in my life. That's unfortunately not what happened.
Of course.
We fell head over heels in love with each other, and it just went from 0 to 100 really quickly. He was like, I have a trip to Europe booked. I don't know what to do. I was like, I'd never tell you not to go travel. And he's like, no, I want you to come with me. And I was like, you're absolutely crazy, but also when are you going?
Also, I'm booking my ticket.
Because you love travel. You're a traveler. You're an adventurer.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, like, even when I married my husband, I was like, we're not talking about kids until we go to Europe for 3 weeks. Like that was like on my bucket list.
Yeah.
So there were all these signs from the universe. I was like, when are you leaving? And he said September 4th, which would have been my 2-year wedding anniversary. Said, when are you coming back? October 4th, which is my late father's birthday. So by this point, I'm like, all right, universe, I hear you. I'm going to Europe. Everything was like fucking amazing, sunshine and rainbows. Met his family. His mom was like, oh my God, you're the daughter-in-law that like I've always wanted. No. His sister was calling me sister. All of his friends were like, we've never seen him like this. Like, it was so obvious that of course I had to get cheated on and get divorced so I could end up with like my fucking soulmate. Right. Like we're good. And a lot of people always ask if he was a rebound, and I wish he was. I was weirdly okay after my divorce. Like I knew, of course there's like trauma that like, you know, the abandonment stuff that's long stemming. Like I was going to have to work through that, but like I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't sad.
No,
like,
because
like,
your heart was broken way before that. Like I always like I was the same way. My heart was broken years before. Like I was done. Yeah.
As blindsiding as it was, I was like, let's pack it up and fucking move it on. Cause I know that this is like a better situation for me.
Yeah.
So the trip to Europe's booked. Everything's amazing. And 48 hours before we're getting on the plane, he tells me he needs to go by himself. And I was devastated. Like this man broke my heart like my ex-husband never could have done.
Yeah.
And I was sitting on my bed at my mom's house because that's when you move when you're divorced at 28. And I was pool of tears, bottle of wine, and was like, well, I can either stay at home heartbroken or I can go travel Europe for a month by myself. And I looked over at my bag, which was fully fucking packed by the door, and was like, guess you're going to Europe, bitch. And I took my backpack and I did 6 countries over the span of a month and wrote Eat, Pray, FML on the journey.
Were you on the same flight as him?
Oh yeah, we sat next to each other. 11 hours, 11 long hours.
Did he give you any explanation?
Yeah, so that we detail all of that in the book. It's actually it's really tricky because I've had so much grief in my life. Like I lost my father really tragically when I was 6 years old, lost my high school sweetheart in a car accident when I was 18. Like I've been through the grief ring. And his brother took his own life a year and a half before he and I met. And when we met, it was like, you know, this happened to me, but I finally feel like I've like moved through it and I'm at peace with it and yada, da, da, da. And like a week before the trip, he said that he had a dream and a lot of those grief feelings resurfaced. And like when he fell in love with me, it kind of opened the floodgates of the shit he had pushed down for so long. So on one hand, it was like, you're a fucking asshole. You know what I've just been through. How can you like invite me and convince me to go on this trip with you and have me be your girlfriend? And on the other hand, I was like, oh my God, I have to take care of this person because he's grieving and broken. So it was really confusing in my shoes because I was defending him towards my friends and family that were like coming after him with pitchforks. But I also was like absolutely devastated. So it was a lot of mixed emotions. But that was his reasoning at the time.
So had you ever done anything like that, travel by yourself in that way before?
I had flown to like, if I had booked a film, like I would fly by myself to, you know, go to location, but then you're met by all the people you're filming with and the crew and the cast. So no, I had never like traveled alone. When I was on the flight to Europe, all I knew about hostels was that there is a horror movie about them and people get brutally fucking murdered in it. I was like, I've seen Taken. Like this could go really badly. I'm blonde. And I'm going to Europe.
There's so no funny. Liam Neeson to come get you.
No, right.
It's so funny to me because you emit this beautiful energy, right? You have this beautiful positive energy. And the funny thing is though, you narrate your life a little bit through horror movies because that's where you were that's where you're, you are like a Nepo horror baby, right? And so, it's this like again this duality, but like, for listeners, like, Gabrielle has this beautiful, light, angelic, like just gorgeous energy about her. And so to hear her say things like, well, I've seen the bloody people get murdered, all this stuff. And it's like, but it's so interesting because that's what you were raised on. Like, that's how the narration of your early days and the talk in your household was probably a lot about that stuff. So you narrate the world through horror movies, which is fascinating.
Totally. I mean, when I decided I was going to write the book, which was the day I found out I was going on the trip by myself, I was like, well, I have to write a fucking book about this, because at that point, my life was like a weird cross between a sitcom and a horror movie. And I was like, this has got to be something. And I knew whatever I was going to learn on this trip and the adventure I was about to have was going to be healing for me in a really big way. And therefore, if I could write it down, was going to be healing for a lot of other people as well. And so I bought a leather-bound journal the day before I left on the trip and took it with me on the plane. I started the first day that I was in London, and I wrote 3/4 of the book in that journal. And it's not like I was journaling and taking notes. Like if you open it, it's chapter 1, and it's very, very close to how the printed book came out. But the whole thing was written in 3 months flat.
And I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, I can tell you from writing the sequel, that's wildly fast.
Yeah, it is.
It pours out of you. I mean, I think that it's so interesting. I had a similar, not some different experience, but sort of similar to what you're talking about, which is when my ex sat me down. We were engaged. We were together for 10 years, living together for 6. We were engaged for 2. And we sat down and he just said to me, like, I'm not in love with you anymore. And I don't think we should have a baby together. And I was like, oh, okay. I like took off my ring, and I could see the heavens part, and I could see the road, and like it's that same feeling. I could see the road in front of me, and I was like, oh, my life's gonna be great. Like it was so clear. And I had known for so long, I'd suspected that he wasn't in love with me, and it was so nice to not feel crazy anymore.
Right.
And I ended up in a situation where I reconnected with someone 9 days later, and I booked a ticket to go see him. He lives in Scotland. 2 days after that. And I canceled the ticket, but we're engaged now. So it worked out.
Oh my God,
so far.
I love it.
Yeah. It's so far, so good. I mean, it's great. But I knew about 3 days into that talking phase with Thomas and my fiance that would devastate me. If he like cut me off 3 days after we started talking, I would be so much more devastated than the end of my engagement. And so like, and people said to me like, well, he's just a rebound. And I was like, no, it's not like that. And it's such a distinctive thing. Like, when you know that thing that happens right after, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's that we're so starved for love that like we fall so hard afterwards. I don't know if that's something that you've thought about.
I think it's dependent on the situation. I have so many readers reach out to me and be like, why is it the guy after that I was with for a month that like I want to absolutely die over? And like, my husband who I was with for 5 years, I'm like, cool, bye. I think it's dependent. For me personally with Javier, I know now looking back on it, that there was a lot of love bombing going on. I think there's 2 different forms of love bombing. One is the narcissistic kind, where someone sees an empath and they're like, I am consciously going to love bomb this person and shower them with love and attention and make sure that they become obsessed with me. And like, very manipulative. And then there's a second kind where it's unconscious, and it's someone who has a really big void within themselves. And when they meet you, they're like, oh my God, this person's filling that void and making me feel so much better. I want more of them. I want more of them. And they start like, it's like, I love you. Let's be together. Like, this is it. This is great. And then eventually they stop feeling better because nobody can fill that void except yourself. And then they're like, oh, you're not making me feel better anymore. I'm going to peace out. And you're like, excuse me, what? I thought we were getting married and like having a life together. So for me, it was that second situation and just made it so much more difficult when you're cut off right at the height of the honeymoon phase, it's like,
oh my gosh, yeah,
total fuck bomb.
Yeah.
And I love the way you put that. I love that.
I love the way you put that. I think
yeah.
that's such a, because I think so often now we have these buzzwords and people are like, he's love bombing you, he's love bombing you.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, I believe a lot of narcissists are out there, and I believe there's a lot of psychopaths out there. I don't believe that everybody is doing it. I think the way you put it was so perfect. Consciously, I think some people are just doing it because they're really excited and they don't know why they're so excited. And they're doing it from, like you said, a place of void, a place of need. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people are just broken and think that you can fix them and don't realize it consciously.
So you wrote the book and it's published. Did you have any idea what the outcome of this movement you started would be? When was the first time you realized that?
It's such a funny question because I've been answering it for 2 years now. And I always feel like, how do I say this humbly? Because I knew the second I had the idea, I was like, I'm going to write a book. It's going to reach so many people and really help change their lives in different ways. And then it's going to go to the screen. Like, that's in the process.
Know what, you're saying it to the right people. But we believe the same shit about our own lives.
I just knew. I was like, oh, this is what I was put on this earth to do. So I did know. I didn't know how exactly it was going to happen or the timeline of it all. But I knew very confidently and clearly that it was going to be a big thing. And it's so funny because when I came back, I finished it and took it to my manager, because that's all I had at the time was my manager who repped me for like acting and directing. And I was like, take this to the big 5. And he was like, okay. So he took it to the big 5 publishers. All of them came back and either said, it's too long, it's too racy, we would want to trim this, or there's too much profanity in it, or we don't think there's a big enough audience for it, which is like
you don't
every woman
the audience.
everywhere.
Yeah.
What?
Oh my God.
And men. Like, I have a lot of male readers too. And it was such a blessing in disguise because all of those doors saying no, because that was in my mind, I was like, it has to be with one of the big 5 and it has to be on every shelf. Like, that was the only path for it. And then I was thankfully set up with a woman who became my mentor named Kelly Randis. She wrote the best-selling self-published book, Spilled Milk. And I had an hour-long conversation with her, and she was like, let me tell you why you should self-publish. And I was like, what? No, like, this is way bigger than that. What do you mean? Let me tell you, from what I know now, if I had not self-published that book, like, it changed my life financially, and it would not have done that if it was with a publishing company.
Yeah, we were literally just talking about this.
Yeah, you're giving me chills, because we can talk about this after we finish recording, but what you're saying reflects, like, regarding books, regarding like so many things that we're doing. So
and I literally just because I was getting the show notes ready, and I came in to, because we live in the same house, we're in different rooms, and I came in.
Well, because Olivia sold her house.
I sold my house to fund the company, so I moved my kids and I back in my parents.
You go, Olivia.
Thank you.
And I gave up my apartment to go to Scotland for 5.5 months to make sure we could, really do the thing. Got engaged while I was there. I'm waiting for my visa, so I'm here. We're both at our mom's house right now.
But great. But it was funny. So I was researching. I obviously know you and I know everything about you, but I was researching you and I saw it said publisher Gabrielle Stone, and we'll talk about it in a little bit with you, but I literally ran into Jenny's room and I'm like, oh my God, she self-published the book. I'm like, I told you. I was like, I knew it. And so like, so I love that. And I think that I would love to hear about your process with that, because we talked to, I'm a writer. I have a novel in the works. I've been writing forever. And we have a lot of writer people that listen to us. Our audience is a lot of women writers because of my audience.
Love that.
And I feel intuitively there's going to be a major shift towards self-publishing. So I'd love to hear about your process with that a little bit, because it sounds like it was incredibly positive.
Yeah. Process wise, it's pretty simple. Like, you work with an editor, do not skimp that step, pay the money. Like, you have to do that. I worked with Erica Ellis at Ink Deep Editing. Like, she's phenomenal and very middle ground price wise. So if you reach out to her, please tell her I sent you. Hired a cover designer, worked with a photographer, shot my covers, sent the photos to the cover designer. Creatively with her, we created our covers. That's Murphy Ray. She does all of Colleen Hoover's books. Worked with a formatter who takes your Word document and like sends back a file for your paperback and a file for your ebook. You upload those onto KDP, which is Amazon's self-publishing house. That way, if 5 books get bought that day, Amazon ships 5 books out. If you sell 500, they ship 500. Like you have no overhead except for the books that you want to have here to sell on your website signed. It's really such an easy process. And the reason why I personally loved the self-publishing journey so much, and I did my second book self-published. The only way I would ever be convinced to do a deal with a publishing company at this point in my career is if they were going to offer to translate the book into other languages. I just did it for Eat, Pray, FML for Spanish. We're almost done with it. It's wildly expensive. And I was like, I'll invest in like one other major language that I'm always asked for. But like beyond that, I would do a deal with a company for that, because it's just massively expensive and so confusing because like you don't know the language and you're just like assuming people are doing it right. It's very hard for my control freak brain. But the reason why I loved the self-publishing journey is, first of all, you get to keep control. So there was no one saying, okay, cool, we're gonna change the cover to this and we don't want you on the cover, or we're going to edit the book to this. Like, you lose a lot of control when a publishing company comes in. I also didn't want them to sign on the book and then hold it for 2 years. Like my soul needed to get that story out like now. So you choose your own timeline for all of that. And like the biggest aspect is the money. I can tell you from doing my first audiobook on Eat, Pray, FML with a company, because when that offer came in, I was like, I don't know anything about audiobooks. Like, yeah, do this for me and put it on all the platforms. The checks that come in from them are devastating, knowing what the percentage would be if I did it on my own. I've done, I did my sequel, The Ridiculous Misadventures. I did that audiobook independently. It cost me $3,000. I made that back in the first week that it was out. It's shockingly different for Eat, Pray, FML. For full transparency. One month I had a video go viral. So that quarter, did really, really well. And I remember when the company sent me the breakdown, they were like, we netted like $74,000 on your audiobook this quarter. Here's 10. And I was like, what? Make that make sense. Like, I'm sorry, what? And so really like the margin of what you will make per copy sold if you're with a publisher is so minimal. It's usually like a 20% royalty compared to, you know, when I sell a copy of Eat, Pray, FML, I think I make like $6.34. It's drastically different. And you're able to see your analytics and track them and be like, cool, when I do this on social media, my numbers go up. Like you have so much control, so much information. And it's like, what people don't realize is that, let's say you sign with one of the big 5 publishers. Awesome. Congratulations. They'll probably pay for your editor, which is great. You know, you're saving like $5 to $6 grand, depending on like the editor that you work with. And then they'll put your book in stores. And that's about it. So you have to know that people need to walk into Barnes and Noble, browse all the fucking rows, get like, pay attention to your cover, want to pick it up, and then decide they're going to buy it. Like, they don't market for you unless you're like Chelsea Handler or one of the Bachelorettes. Like, they're not going and putting in money on a first time writer, like to go and market their book. So it's like, so you're telling me you want me to get a 20% royalty on the books that I'm selling, but I have to do all my own marketing and grind away and like grassroots that shit by myself. Like, why the hell would I give you that big of a percentage if I have to do all that work anyways?
100%. And just for listeners, because I know, because I've been following your journey, tell us a little bit about where your little old book has been, because it's been around the world.
My little book. Yeah, it's been read in countries everywhere. Like, I have readers and now listeners on the podcast that are in Africa, that are all over Europe, that are in Australia. Like, it's absolutely wild. And my biggest marketing tool has been social media. I have a love-hate relationship with it. There's days where I'm like, I'm moving to Thailand, I'm getting rid of my phone and no one will ever see me again. And I'm fine with that. But when I got on TikTok in 2020, after begrudgingly being like, this is stupid and it's for kids.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened and I was like, I'm bored out of my mind and there's really great content to scroll through on there. I started posting about the book. Videos started going viral. You could very clearly see when a video would go viral, how the sales would absolutely skyrocket. Changed my life financially, bought a house like in LA, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
It really completely changed the game for me. And social media and TikTok specifically, like when a video goes viral and is pushed to millions of people, you can't pay for marketing like that.
Yeah.
Like you can't pay for marketing like that. Even if it's on TV and it's happening like during the commercial break, like people are going to be getting chips and like going to the bathroom. They're not watching that. So when they're scrolling on an app that they're choosing to be on and actively ingesting content, and they see something where they're like, oh shit, that's a wild story, I want to read that book. And then they can just close their Instagram app, open up Amazon and purchase it.
Brilliant.
Like there's nothing better.
And you're making all of the money because like I follow other authors who are with publishing companies and they're like, the publishing company says that I have to do this now. And it's like, you know, they might not necessarily know your audience. You know your audience. You're tracking all the stats.
And let me tell you, every publishing company is berating their authors to get on TikTok. So they're basically saying, hey, go do what Gabrielle's doing. We're just going to pay you a lot less.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why? Don't give up your money.
No. So where are you today? Because I know you've had some very exciting things happen in your life lately. So catch us up to speed.
Yeah. So people will read in the sequel, the man that I am engaged to now, we're getting married in March.
Soon.
It was not an easy road to get there. It was a big roller coaster of up and downs, which you'll read about. And but I'm happy that we went through it all. We say all the time that if we didn't have the path that we had, we wouldn't be as strong and successful as we are now. So we are together and wildly happy. We have 3 dogs. He has a beautiful little girl. So I'm now a stepmom. Well, we call it bonus mom, but
love it. We love it.
And yeah, life is really great. I have the 2 books that are out. I also came out with a self-love healing journal called Fuck Off, I'm Healing, which is a step-by-step guide to really kind of like give you prompts and different stories that will help you dig deeper and kind of heal the different traumas that life has thrown at you, not just for heartbreak, for forgiveness and betrayal and anything that has come up throughout your life. And, you know, the podcast has become an extension of that community. It's been so great to have people show up every week. And it's really become like a safe therapy space where I drop F-bombs and, you know, give people some really great healing advice and bring on some awesome guests that share their really powerful stories. And it's just become its own kind of like little business and community, which has been really beautiful to see that everything that I went through was so incredibly worth it. And I would do it 10 times over to be here doing what I'm doing.
And what I love about your brand is that you are all about celebration. And that's what we are here at Fresh Starts. And that was something we set out from the beginning. We're like, we're not shitting on people. We're celebrating and we're empowering. And so like I was, you know, when you go through a divorce, as you know, surrounding yourself, even on social media, with the people that you surround yourself with, you know, there are some people on TikTok that were so anti everything, anti-men, anti-love, anti-this, anti. And when you come across your TikToks, it's like a breath of fresh air, right? It's like she's celebrating herself. She's celebrating her journey and all this empowerment. And like, it was just so beautiful to see a woman that went through all this stuff and was like, no, we're going to like fucking rock this world and change the world together and like, you know, own it. And so I just appreciate everything you're doing. And for anybody that's maybe going through a divorce or a breakup or a big life change, what are some wise words of wisdom that you would impart to them?
Firstly, I would say keep your heart open, which I know is tough when you've been hurt and have gone through it. if there was ever a time for me to close up shop and put the gate up around my heart, it would have been after I got cheated on in my marriage. And if I would have done that, I would not have fallen in love with Javier and gone on this incredible journey that helped heal myself and changed my entire career path and trajectory.
Yeah.
So always keep your heart open.
I love
It's
that.
the best thing that you can do. And when you're going through those tough moments, I would say to you that no matter how dark it is, and if you feel like you can't see any light, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I promise you it's there. Keep going, because it's more magical than you will ever understand. And it's so worth it once you get there.
Oh, I love that. And now the
Beautiful.
most important question we always ask our guests. What was the last thing you ate and truly loved?
Truly loved. Today for dinner, before I got on with you guys, which was such an early dinner, I was like, I'm like a grandma at this point. It was like 5 p.m. I had linguine and clams
Oh, the best.
in white sauce. And
Mhm.
the reason why I haven't had it in so long, like probably over a year, if not more. And my mom had it when she ate it all the time when she was pregnant with me. And she would always joke that whatever she was eating when she was pregnant with me, I ate when I was a toddler. So like, all of my friends would be like, I want chicken nuggets. I want McDonald's. And she'd be like, Gabrielle, what do you want? And say, I want linguine and clams, mom. So it's like one of those like sense memory foods. And for some reason I was like hankering for it tonight, and I ordered that and a chopped salad, and it was divine.
That sounds
Amazing. Well,
that does sound amazing.
So good. I love that you're pursuing joy through food, because that's what we're all about here.
Yes. That's
well,
like most of my joy in life is food.
we understand.
You're
We
in good
understand.
company then.
Yeah, I understand. Well, thank you for sharing your story. And we're going to obviously link to everything in our show notes and our blog post, so everybody can go and read your books. I was definitely inspired, by everything you're doing. And you were just such a light in the world.
Yeah.
And what I love is that it's rare to come across a woman who just owns the fact that she's going to change the world. And that's,
thank you.
we're like that. And it's
Yeah.
rare to come across other women that are like, no, I'm fucking changing the world. Get out of my way.
Mhm.
And like,
Yes.
and so I love, we always say it's like these women are in our coven. Like, and we're just so thrilled that we got a chance to talk to you and share
Yeah.
your story. So thank you for taking the time out, because I know you're
Oh my
incredibly busy.
God. You're so welcome. And thank you for having me in the coven. It's a great spot to be.
Thank you for listening to today's story. We're always here, and we're proud of you. Until next time, brave one.
A Fresh Story is brought to you by Fresh Starts Registry, the first and only platform for everything you need to start again. You can read the show notes and learn more about today's episode at freshstartsregistry.com/podcast.